Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2013 ASCA webinar series. Today's installment of the 2013 webinar series is in partnership with the Century Council, and the presentation is going to be on underage drinking, why it's a problem, and can be done, and what can be done about it, with the presenter, Dr. Anthony Wolf. Before we get started, I just wanted to touch on a few things that have to do with the technical side of this broadcast. When you joined, you probably heard that you were in listen-only mode. What that means is you're not going to be able to talk during the webinar, but it doesn't mean that we don't want your participation. On the right side of your screen, you should have a menu, and within that menu, an area that says Chat and Questions. Please feel free to send any questions you have there, whether they're technical about the system or have to do with the presentation itself, and we'll make sure they get relayed to Dr. Wolf. The second thing is this webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on the ASCA website. I'll put up the link to that website in just a moment, as well as the PDF version of the presentation will be available there. So now I'm going to pass it on so you can learn some more about the Century Council and be introduced to Dr. Wolf.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Hey, everyone. Thank you for Sorry about that. So again, hello everyone. Thank you, Jeff. My name is Fadi Cycli. I'm the Programs Director at the Century Council. I'm just going to give a brief introduction about the Century Council and what we do, and then pass it on to Dr. Wolf. So the Century Council is basically a nonprofit, and we are funded by the leading distillers of the United States. You can see our members on the screen there. And we are a leader in the fight against drunk driving and underage drinking, and promote responsible decision-making regarding beverage alcohol. Our flagship program is basically the Ask, Listen, Learn program, Kids and Alcohol Don't Mix. And we've been doing, for over 20 years, 22 years now, we've been a leading force in the fight against underage drinking, and our program has allowed us to reach 20 million parents, over 20 million parents, kids, educators, counselors all over the country. The next slide shows a snapshot of the Ask, Listen, Learn program. So you can see our parents' brochure on the left, the kids' brochure on the right of your screen. Some of our scholastic material that's coming out this year actually came out already. You have our interactive game at the bottom there. It's basically a combination of keeping kids active and physically healthy, and an education about underage drinking, and our website on the right with our Ask, Listen, Learn superstars over the years. To give you, April is a very important month for us. It's National Alcohol Awareness Month, and we have a lot of activities going on, and this is a snapshot of it. We aim to start 1 million discussions with our parents, with our partners, parents, educators, and counselors. So everyone who's attending today, you count into the 1 million discussions, so we thank you. We have the Ask, Listen, Learn Schools Challenge with our partners at NASPE, the Physical Educators Association. It has to do with our interactive game, and if you'd like more information about that to register your school for the challenge or something, you can visit our website or contact me at cyclef@centurycouncil.org. I'm sorry. And then we have a very important day with Ali Raisman, Take Our Sons and Daughters to Work Day. It's going to be on Capitol Hill, and we're very excited about that as well. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and we newly unveiled our Pinterest page, so feel free to check that out as well. Our guest speaker today, Dr. Anthony Wolf, we're very happy to have him with us. He is a practicing child psychologist and author of numerous books, and he is also one of our National Advisory Board members, so we're very happy to have him with us. He brings in a lot of experience to our organization, a lot of wisdom and expertise in the field, and so I will give it up to him so he can talk to you guys today.
Hi, well, it's really a treat to be here, and this is basically as part of the Alcohol Awareness Month. What I'm going to be talking about is basically underage drinking. And in talking about it, I'm going to be talking about how I think that many people have a lot of ambivalence about underage drinking. How bad is it really? And I'm definitely going to be talking about at some length about it definitely is bad, it definitely is a problem, and why that is. And then I'm going to be talking about what parents and school counselors can do about underage drinking that maybe is useful. As you can see on the, oh, I should add one thing. Yes, besides it was said that I'm a psychologist who sees teens, but one thing that definitely was a significant part of my training is that I have 2 grown kids who once upon a time were teenagers, and that gave me some very good lessons. The main thing of which was humility, which I think anybody who deals with teenagers gets a good lesson in that. Now, looking at the first, I want to just run through some general facts about underage drinking. In a Monitoring the Future survey, this shows how the percentage of kids in different age grades that drank during the last month. And as you can see on the screen, that from 1992 to 2012, there were significant drops in the amount of underage drinking that went on, but it also shows that there still is a lot of underage drinking that continues. Some other facts about underage drinking, what probably a lot of people know because it gets a lot of publicity, is that there are many, many teenagers who die in fatal car crashes where alcohol was a problem, and this is showing how many, in 2001, 846 deaths involved where the driver had the 16, 20-year-old drivers had a blood alcohol level of 0.08, which is the official turning point for whether that's too much liquor or not. Now that it shows that when 2000, what the screen also shows that between 2002 and 2011, the above represented a 41% decrease, which is really, really considerable. But again, 846 kids, that's a lot. Another fact about underage drinking is the children who use alcohol before the age of 15 are 5 times more likely to become alcohol dependent than those who began drinking at age 21. Last, why teens say they drink. This from a survey. They say a lot of reasons, but among them were to fit in with friends and other kids, peer pressure, for fun, but for a lesser reason, for becoming an alcoholic. And I think the point of that's in these slides, and this one is that it kind of shows that what teens worry about is more about the present and present consequences and considering what's going on in their life now than future consequences. And that certainly is a characteristic of kids. I think that the main thing that I wanted just to show is that there has been dramatic change in the amount of underage drinking and problems from it, but it still is a very real and very big problem. I think I mentioned earlier that in society today there really is an ambivalence about underage drinking that I think a lot of current adults look back on high school and they remember with fondness the great times they had in high school, and some of them include drinking. You know, the fond memories, the good old high school days, going to keg parties at Willow Point, and people thinking back and say, boy, that was maybe the best times of my life, and do I really want to deprive my kids of all that fun? At the same time, there's a part of them that definitely says, I don't want my kids to drink, and I want my kids to drink because of the risks involved. What many parents think, and this is sort of a general attitude that a lot of parents do have, they're probably going to drink anyway. Besides, adolescence is supposed to be a time for fun. How bad is it if they drink? There are worse things than drinking. What control do I have anyway? I can't keep them locked up in their rooms all through high school. Maybe if they do drink, and if it's somehow supervised, there'll be less potential for trouble. Their behavior will be less risky. I mean, I don't like it. I don't want them to do it, but really, how bad is it? There are things that are a lot worse. I mean, I think that that's a fair characterization of a lot of parents in regard to underage drinking. what I think that parents do fear about drinking and what the other flip side of it is. And there really is one big fear, the number one fear that kind of trumps everything else, which is the fear of drinking and driving. There's been a lot of publicity about it, justifiably, and that really has come and I think entered American consciousness as one of the big number one reason why people don't want their kids to drink and drive. A couple others, but they're way down, are getting into trouble and hurting their college record. And for girls, the idea that drinking makes girls potentially be more likely to have sex. And that definitely is a bit of a one-sided thing, because I think most parents, if their parents would worry about it, they worry about their daughters far less in regard to the guys. That what I want to present now are a number of reasons why, and there are many, many of them, why drinking, underage drinking really is not good, and that there are many reasons beyond just the drinking and driving. Drinking and driving is, as I said, the number one thing that parents worry about, both as a driver and as a passenger. I mean, kids will go out, be at a party or something like that, and it's not they who are going to do the driving, but somebody else wants to drive. And they say, I'm fine, I can handle it. And of course the problem is that a lot of kids will say they can handle it, but they can't, and it is a real problem. Then another source of harm, apart from accidents, is that just as a result of the drinking and what drinking can do, it can cause kids to get seriously hurt, get into fights, or potentially hurting someone else. And the other thing, which certainly is a phenomenon that comes with drinking, is engaging in risky behavior. That kids will get wild, they'll follow dares, jumping out a window, or swimming out at night in the pond where they really don't have the swimming skills, that they go out a little deeper, and as a result can sometimes they can drown. Another aspect of problems with underage drinking, the harm that can come from underage drinking, is that drinking can actually, in great quantity, can be fatal. Also, and I think people are aware of it, that when combined with other drugs, this can even be more dangerous. And one of the trends over the last couple decades is that there's been a real increase in the use of prescription drugs as recreational drugs, and they also don't do real well when combined with alcohol. The other thing that can happen in regard to alcohol and drugs is that kids under the influence of alcohol will try drugs that they wouldn't have otherwise. Another problem that comes as a result of drinking is that there's trouble with the law. It's illegal, and it can produce involvement with the law, and that's something that parents and kids absolutely do not want to have their kid involved with the legal system. And another problem with underage drinking is that it can lead to behavior that can seriously damage their future, which is to say they can have to get a criminal record, they can get kicked out of school, school performance can be seriously hurt. If a kid is serious into drinking, there can, as mentioned, serious injuries that can happen, and these are all going down across the future. Another problem that comes with underage drinking has to do with problem sexual behavior. That no question that drinking makes kids more vulnerable to rape occurring, both from the standpoint of the victim or as the perpetrator. And again, another problem with drinking, that kids are much more likely to do unsafe sex, raising the chance of pregnancy and STDs. This leads to a rather different kind of problem that comes with underage drinking, which might be called sort of the hidden dangers, which has to do with the nature of what alcohol is. And alcohol is popular for a reason, and the reason is that alcohol can make fun. It can make kids be less inhibited. They can have a good feeling, and what can happen as a result of too regular use of alcohol in the teenage years is that fun becomes defined as drinking. So they become dependent on drinking for fun. And what can happen is that they don't know how to have non-drinking fun. They don't even know that non-drinking fun exists. And what can happen, which really is definitely not a good thing, is that the fun part of their life is now basically, it's under the charge of drinking. The drinking is in charge of the fun part of their life, which is not such a great thing going forward. Another serious problem with drinking is that alcohol can be used as a feelings changer, so that if you're anxious, if you're under stress, kids may turn to drinking. And what this does, and this can be a real problem, where kids use alcohol for stress release, they can become dependent on the drinking to help them deal with stress. And as a result, they don't learn how to deal with stress. That one of the things, for example, is that you learn from experience is that just time can allow things that if you hang in there, often stress can go away. But they don't learn this because they go to drinking first. Another part is they don't develop the non-drinking stress coping skills. This also applies with depression, and that kids can be use drinking as a cure for depression, which really isn't real good, because what can happen is that kids in drinking, when they're depressed, can kind of numb themselves in regard to the depression. And what happens, which is exactly the opposite of what's useful, is that instead of acting, instead of doing things to actually try and work out what actually is going on that makes them be depressed, they just sink further and further into the depression. Which, in effect, alcohol becomes a first option as a solution to bad feelings in their bodies, which is really not such a good idea. What also can happen, and I think a lot of people realize, is that drinking can exacerbate some of the feelings that happen. For example, depression. That what can happen with drinking is that whatever's bothering them can seem bigger, can seem worse, makes people focus on the negative much more. My life sucks. This always happens to me, and they don't picture. They're not with a more sensible part of themselves. And what can happen is, with depression and drinking on top of it, there can sort of be a downward spiral of mood that can really be. Sometimes they'll even produce harm to themselves or even suicide. Same problem and different results can happen with anger, which is drinking. There's sort of belligerence that can sometimes happen with kids, and kids who are drinking will be hypersensitive, and they take offense at stuff that they wouldn't have otherwise. What are you looking at? What is it? And which is to say, the drinking, for one, producing more fights, and then once the fights begin, because they have less control, and their mood, they get angrier, the fights are bigger and more dangerous, and potentially people getting hurt or even killed. One of the things that can happen with drinking and that can cause anger and unfortunate results is it can ruin relationships. That one of the things that is real characteristic of people who drink is that they'll say things. They're things that they think, but they never would say. Well, when they drink, they say them, and will make comments. I don't really like the way your nose is, or your lips are gross, or all kinds of comments. And what can happen is that from things that absolutely should never have been said in a relationship are said, and it kind of leads into this historic incident that actually can actually end up killing relationships. What kids don't know. Well, this is a problem with alcohol, which is what kids absolutely do not appreciate, is that alcohol has a real power of its own, and it can create dependence on its own, and kids vastly underestimate the power that alcohol has and think that they have control of it, no problem, and they truly think, kids who are now seriously under the control of alcohol in their lives, they truly think they can handle it, which is not so good. Another thing about drinking, and just talking about the problem with adolescents, is that the fact of underage drinking, is that adolescents are more immature. Their judgment isn't as good, and they're more willing to take risks. And this isn't so good because teenagers have a sense of invulnerability, where risks don't seem real. And not only do they have this sense the risks don't seem real, but one of the things that is really pretty scary about teenagers is that they will seek out risk-taking, that they'll push the envelope, that it becomes a source of excitement. And that just is part of being an adolescent. Another thing that, again, just because they're a teenager, that they do, kind of automatic coming with being a teenager, is that if anything that the adult world says, they want to do the opposite. So here are these kids who have a lot of not real safe ways of thinking and looking at the world, and you add on top of that that they're drinking, that really isn't such a good mix. Another problem with drinking is that it really gets in the way of any kind of a healthy lifestyle. That with drinking they're abusing, they're putting substances, not good substances, in their body rather than benefiting their body and their mind. And a problem is underage drinking has the potential, could cause harm to their growing bodies and their still developing brains. What can be done? Oh, I've left out one. Let me go back and see if I can. Yes, about trouble at home. This is an obvious one, that you can get in bad fights with their parents, that sometimes if a kid has been drinking and the parent confronts the kid and he's come drinking, there can actually be fights that turn physical between parent and kid, but more usually in what is that kids by drinking become more vulnerable to harsh punishments, grounding, cell phone taken away, computer taken away, car taken away, obviously. Another thing that can happen at home is that the kid shifts into, from being a drinker, shifts into being a bad guy at home, an untrustworthy kid. And what ends up happening is that the parents have increased surveillance, or much more on the kid's case, and the kids end up with less freedom, which is exactly the opposite of what they want. Now let me get to where I was, which is what can be done. Parents' role, and one of the things that, when you're talking about parents' role with their own teenage kids, is that in the course of a normal adolescence, one of the things that can happen is that kids rebel against their parents. That as part of normal adolescence, they feel that that their parents are idiots, that everything about their parents is stupid. They don't want to hear them. They don't want to be with them. And this can come just from being with their parents. And so here you have the parents, and they're dealing with the normal adolescent response, which is that the kids have developed a temporary allergy to them. And as a result, the parents want to try and deal with the alcohol problem, but their kids seem to be allergic to them. But, and this is the big deal in talking about parents and kids, despite all the above, parents have a very real influence on their kids. That kids do hear and what parents need to do, and what is a definite thing that parents can do, is that they can be more of a presence in their kids' lives, which is to say, asking what's going on, learning about their friends, being with their kids. And this is kind of a cute thing, because teenage kids have very mixed feelings about being with their parents, which is to say, kids can't wait until their parents are in a different room, but at the same time, kids like the idea, teenagers like the idea that their parents care about them, that their parents love them, their parents like being with them. And one of the solutions to that is, if you're a parent of a teenager, is that you kind of have to have a sense of humor, which isn't always that easy, about what's going on. But what you want to do, and what parents want to do, is not only being with them, but parents want to know what they're doing. And this involves staying on top of where they are, asking where they're going, keeping track of them. and this is one of the places that cell phones have come in, and parents will say, "Where are you?" And the kids say, "We're going to gyms." We'll call them when you go to gyms. Well, kids don't always call. Why didn't you call? You said you were going to call when you went to gyms. Well, my cell phone wasn't worked, and so the attempts at trying to stay on top of kids, you really have to stay on your toes, because they can be pretty sneaky, and that's one of the skills that I think is involved in being on top of what's going on with kids. You sort of have to have a certain amount of doubt in your head about what's actually going on. One of the another fact, and for better or for worse, this is what the deal is, that the more presence and involvement of parents and more presence and involvement of adults in the lives of kids, not just when they're in school, but in the other parts of their lives, the less room there is for kids to drink. Hence, if you have a parent who isn't there, who isn't in the home, that kid is definitely more vulnerable, as maybe are his or her friends, to having drinking occur, because there isn't an adult there to supervise. And in today's world, that is an issue with both parents, with a lot of situations with both parents working. And you do the best you can, but the fact is that the more opportunity for forbidden behavior, which basically in this case talking about drinking, the more that the probability that will happen. That also includes just access to alcohol, which means that as a parent you want to be aware of what's going on, at least with the alcohol that you have control of in your house. And at least to some extent, supervision is a big key in having some control over what happens with underage drinking. How should parents react? This gets into punishment and grounding, that the standard reaction that parents have is that they'll be like having kids grounded for an extended period of time, or they will take away cell phones, they'll take away computer, they'll take away car use, and there is no question that in talking to teenagers, that's something that is in their head, that they fear of getting caught. That the fear is that if they get caught, they will lose, they'll lose privileges, they'll lose things that they genuinely care about. But punishment and grounding, even though it is something that kids are afraid of and that kids worry about and that kids don't want to have happen, it's a two-edged sword, because what can happen is that if parents are too much into grounding and punishment and things that kids really absolutely don't want to have happen, one of the things that can happen is that the kids become alienated from their parents, and you have the situation of a kid being in the home, but it's sort of like enemy camps, and the kids feeling, I don't want to be on the good side of my parent, I don't care what they think because they're jerks, because they ground me all the time. And one of the major controls not to be underestimated and not to be downplayed as being significant is the connection between parent and a kid. And I can only say that that connection, the feeling of being connected, is a major source of control with teenage kids. So that if kids feel that at least that their parents care about them, that they're not always in bad graces of their parents, what can happen is that it's sort of like the kid's conscience that's in their head, and it's basically the voice of their parent saying to them, oh, you shouldn't be doing this. Oh, this is a bad thing that you're doing, and it definitely has influence on what parents do. The other thing is that besides that is that parents don't understand the power that their rules have in regard to kids, and that the rules exist inside of kids and really do pull them back into what's going on in their lives. Let me just check the time. What time do we have? Okay. No, we got plenty of time. That so that you want to be careful as parents not to come down too hard and thereby lose this very valuable piece of control with kids. Something else that parents need to know, definitely worth talking about, is trust. And the fact is that trust is very tricky because I'm a strong believer that when you're talking about teenagers, you can't really count on. It's great, it's wonderful if you have kids, if you have teenagers you can trust, but there's a basic unbridgeable gap between parents and kids. And that unbridgeable gap is that we want them to be safe, and they want to have a good time. And it is a fact that there can be lots of these kids out there who are wonderful kids who grow up to be wonderful, honest, good citizens. But as teenagers, they do sneak and lie, and they sneak and lie not because they disrespect their parents, but because they want to have a good time, and they feel that their parents, if they knew what was going on, would be able to prevent it, which is basically true. The fact is that parents significantly underestimate the amount of drinking behavior that their kids do. This sort of goes across the board. The parents underestimate a lot of the unacceptable, more naughty behavior that kids do. And of course, one of the things about kids, not only, and these are good kids, not only do they sneak and lie, but they can be very convincing. And definitely, it's been my experience that I've heard kids who are really truly outraged that their parents aren't trusting them, even when they're actually lying, which is to say that in regard to the issue of trust, as I said, it's great if you have a kid who you can trust, but it's also wise to think about being savvy, realistic, rather than totally naive as a parent. Another important resource that parents hope that the parents hopefully are able to have is to be able to talk to each other amongst them, which is a great thing, because then you have parents going back and forth talking about what's going on with the kids, what they're doing. There's much more awareness of a community, and that's a great thing if you can do it, which is that it really is a good idea that parents sometimes reach out to other parents to be able to talk about them and their teenage kids and drinking. Another fact that parents need to know is that talking to their teen works. They do hear that that parents become a trusted source, trusted in the sense that kids know that you really are out for their best interest, and they can deny it, and they can pretend that their parents are really just trying to kill their fun. But the truth is, and kids know this, that their parents really are interested in what's best for them. And what parents say can counteract, at least be another source of information for some of the not-so-good stuff that they pick up from their peers. And the fact is that when you're talking to your kids about underage drinking, when parents talk to kids about this, a lot of eye-rolling, deep breath, yeah, but they do hear. And when should parents talk to their kids about drinking? Answer, anytime, anywhere. It's always good, and as much as you do it, the better. What to say, certainly many of the things that I talked about earlier, but the biggest thing is for you to be honest. It's not so much figuring out the perfect lecture, but what do you think? What are the things that you worry about? And that's what you want to communicate to your kid. Another thing that is a problem in talking to the kids, which is conversations are better than lectures. We as parents have a tendency to lecture. Not that the lectures are bad, and lectures are fine, and you can give as many as you want, but conversations are even better. And kind of a rule that maybe is useful in dealing with parents dealing with kids is that if the kids ever start talking to you about some of these issues, like talking about drinking, what you absolutely want to do as a parent if the kids are talking is to shut up, because you want it so much better when they're talking. And of course, you also can ask what they think, and if they can come back at you with their opinions about drinking and talking about what's going on in their world in regard to drinking, that's always great stuff. What can happen And a fact about talking about underage drinking, about drinking with kids, is that probably more of the time than not, they're not sitting there smiling and saying, "Oh, that's good. I can't wait to talk to the kids at school about that good advice you just gave me." But more of it's with the eye rolling and the not wanting to listen, not the drinking lecture again, and then but you go ahead and you do it anyway, and you want to persist and you want to do it again and again, and you stay with it because, as I said, they do hear. And bottom line is that you want to persist. Role of counselors vis-a-vis parents. You want to reinforce with them that drinking is a problem, that you want parents to be aware that drinking is out there, that often parents are less aware of it than they might be, and you want to emphasize that the big solution that they can do, the thing that parents can do that can make a big difference, is that they need to get involved, and to the extent that they can, it really does have an effect in regard to their kids' drinking behavior. Another thing, in a sense, it's part of the same thing, that as a counselor you want to be a cheerleader to the parents, to give them the sense that they have more effect and more power than they think, because that's one of the problems that parents have dealing with teenagers. They kind of feel overmatched, that there's not anything they can do. You want to make it clear that you really can. A last thing on that is that there are any local resources that you're aware of that if there are in the area, to recommend to them if they need help or are looking for more information. Counselors' role vis-a-vis students. One thing, again, is that with students, the role of the counselor, in a very significant way, is different from the role of the parent. And the big difference, the significant difference, there are a lot of differences, obviously, is that kids don't necessarily get in trouble. There aren't going to necessarily be consequences of talking with you as a counselor. With parents, there's always that potential. There's no question that kids, if they feel that they can speak openly, that they're not fear of dire consequences, they will speak more openly, which is why one rule, and I think it's a good one, that you want to do in talking with teens, is being very upfront about confidentiality in different situations, different schools, different individual tastes with counselors, as to what confidentiality you allow or won't allow, how much of that comes into play. But it's an important thing that kids know about it, because if kids feel, if kids feel that there is at least some degree of confidentiality, they will talk, and they will talk more, and that really can, they can talk about things that they just simply wouldn't with their parents. A nice thing about the role of the counselor is that parents tend to get a far more babyish version of their kids. Counselors, on the other hand, can get a more mature version. I certainly, in my experience with the kids, not exclusively, but you certainly get this more mature version that the poor parents, unfortunately, get the ones who are really not quite the same. Another thing kids will do is they'll almost always demonize their parents. And the tricky thing as a counselor is that you don't want to get too much into completely spending the time empathizing with the kids about what nasty parents they have, because what you really want kids to do is to look at what can they do. If there are things that are in their life they're not happy with, what is their ability to be able to change what's going on, rather than just berating their parents. A very big deal in dealing with kids, and anybody dealing with kids, is being genuine and honest. That's something that kids are very sensitive to, that their antenna really are out for. It's the biggest plus with teenagers, is if they feel that you're genuine. And one thing that you maybe want to do is your own introspection before, if you're going to talk with them about drinking, about what do you really think, what do you think of underage drinking? Because a lot of people, as I said, have real ambivalence about it. What you want to do is make sure that you're not in any way condoning drinking, while at the same time it's something that you want to discuss and the risks of, and to be able to have them hopefully talk openly about it. Last thing on that is you want to have a balanced approach, but one of the things that goes on, how much of you do you want to bring into the conversations with kids in the counselor role? And I'm kind of a believer that you don't want to be too revealing, that you do want to, that you're not really exactly a friend, that you are a counselor, and that you can be a nice counselor and one who they can trust. But it gets a little tricky if you get too much that the line between you and your role as a professional, as a counselor, gets a little too murky with the kids, so that it's something you want to be careful of. But at the same time, if you can talk about yourself without being, in a sense, too revealing, things that they don't need to know that are a little too personal, that can be useful. Talking with kids about underage drinking, the thing kids will say is that the thing that's the biggest problem for them is saying no. And what kids fear is that in saying no, it may produce distance between them and others, and it can lead to ostracism. And they fear in saying no in these situations that look uncool. They feel that it'll look cowardly. They fear that in saying no, they'll be rejecting whoever it is that's offering the drink, and that actually can sometimes be the case, that the kid offers a drink, kid says no, and the other kid sort of feels rejected and pulls away. Certainly what kids worry about is they don't want to come across to other kids with a holier-than-thou attitude, because that obviously can turn off the other kids, and this is something that kids constantly worry about. You can practice different ways of saying no, but I'm a believer that the biggest thing is really to talk about what they really are afraid of and what their concerns are. And it may indeed can even be that there may be kids who they don't want to hang around with because it's just not gonna work out. But the big deal is in talking, just actually discussing it. Last, what should a counselor say? Again, whatever you feel are important things about underage drinking. All the things I talked about earlier as being bad things about underage drinking, I think they're all valid, and I think they're all worth saying. As I said, lectures turn kids off. At the same time, they have things that you feel are important points. Say them. It's always good to ask them their opinions. Much better if they give you a lecture about what do they think are the problems. And simple questions like, why do you think kids drink? What do you think are risks in drinking? Do you think drinking is a problem? All of these, just to get kids talking about it, are really useful. Bottom line, and the bottom line, I think, in the adult world, dealing with, or one of the big things in dealing with drinking, is that underage drinking really is a problem. Talking about it, however, does make a difference.
All right, Jeff? Yeah.
I'm here. We're just waiting for some questions to come in right now, so if you want to just hold on for just 1 second. But definitely thank you, Dr. Wolf. That was a great presentation.
Thank you, and thank everybody for being here this afternoon.
Yeah.
So just to remind attendees, on the right-hand side of your screen, you should have a menu, and in that menu there's something that says chat and questions. And you should be able to just type
they're waiting for people to type them in.
Just be able to type right into that to ask your questions to Dr. Wolf.
Also, to the attendees, if you have any questions regarding resources or something from the Century Council, please feel free to ask me as well, and I can provide you with my contact details as well.
Scotty, I'm going to put your email address in the chat box so they can see it there. And
Sure, definitely. Please go ahead. Shelby, I mean, you can definitely use it if you'd like to. If you can see from the images, you can see that there are some further resources that we can send to you as well. But I mean, if you want to present it to other counselors and give it to other, like use it as an advice, I'm sure Dr. Wolf would agree that it would be more than fine. And Shelby, if you'd like to visit our website, it's www. And everybody else, if you'd like to visit the www.centurycouncil.org, you can find a lot more resources there as well in our materials for counselors. We actually developed with collaboration with the Association of School American School Counselor Association, a brief one-pager. It actually has a flyer basically, and has more resources as well. So please feel free to visit our website and look at our materials. And if you have any questions, I will gladly answer them.
Yeah, there's another question from Gabrielle, and it looks like something more for you, Fadi. She just wants to know, does your website have a presentation tailored for school counselors, or is this the closest thing?
This is probably the closest thing. We actually have one, as I just mentioned, we have the flyer, and I can send it to her. If she wants to email me her address or something, I can send her some samples as well. But we don't have a PowerPoint presentation per se, but we do have some materials like flyers and such.
Okay. You should expect an email from her.
Great, great. That's awesome. And that is about it.
And I just posted again, because we've gotten a couple questions about missing parts of the presentation or wanting the PowerPoint. Everything will be posted on the ASCA webinar archive. I put the link up in the chat area. You can just click on that link. You do need to be an ASCA member. If you're not an ASCA member, send me an email. Everyone should have been receiving emails from me, reminders about this webinar over the last couple of days. You know, be sure to just send me an email, and I can send you a link to it directly. Since this is one in partnership with Century Council, it's not necessarily limited to ASCA members only.
Okay, cool.
We'll just wait for one more minute. Anybody else has any other questions? Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, you know, I want to thank the Century Council and also Dr. Wolf for this great presentation. And thank you to all the participants for joining us today. I don't know, if Fadi, if you have anything you'd like to say as well.
I just want to thank Dr. Wolf and everybody who attended, and ASCA as well for hosting the webinar, and we'll hopefully have more in the future.
I want to thank ASCA for inviting me, and hopefully people found this useful.
All right. Well, thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.
All right. Great. Thank you, Jeff.